Okay. We have a packed schedule for this coming 1.5 hours, so let's get started. And I guess people might drop in as we go. But welcome to today's seminar that we have chosen to call The Roads to the Development Jobs. That is a recurring event that we at FUF hosts every semester to share information and also hopefully some inspiration on how one can get a job in the development sector. We have divided today's session into two parts. So for the first 45 minutes about that, we will have a panel discussion with 3 young professionals who will share their experiences on how they ended up in where they are today. And this part will be held in English, and we will have some questions also, time for questions in the end. And then we will switch on to Swedish, and then you will get to listen to some presentations from both Sida and the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, who will share some junior possibilities that they offer within their respective workplace. Very quickly, I just want to introduce myself first before we start. My name is Ronja, and I have worked here at FUF for about 2.5 years now, with our activities connected to career, internships, and so on. I hope all of you are already familiar with FUF, but if you are not, I can just briefly say that we are a politically and religiously independent non-profit association, working to spread knowledge, create discussions, and for engagement for a more just and sustainable world. And our work is divided into different branches, where one of them is our development magazine, where we post news, articles, debates, interviews about current topics, but also more forgotten topics that maybe are not portrayed so much in the mainstream media. One part of our work is also the engagement, where you as a student or interested, like a member that want to engage, you can be part of our editorial staff or social media group and help us to produce material, for example, to the magazine or other types of events. Another thing that we do a lot is to arrange events. We do that ourselves and also together with other actors to shed lights on current topics. And then we have the career part of it, where we every semester offer a number of internship possibilities at Sida, for example, but also other organizations, companies, and authorities working within global development. That was very quickly about FUF, but now let's move on to the first part of today's seminar. So I'm very happy to have you all here today. Samira, Sonia, Simon, very welcome. And I think that what you share maybe with the audience that are here listening today is like the feeling of that it can be very tricky to do this transit from academia into work life. I think, yeah, you have all been in their shoes, having all these questions about where to start, how to personally brand yourself, and all this also in a very competitive job market that we are in today. You have all individual experiences. You have had different strategies maybe on the path that you have chosen on where you are today. So I think I want to start in that part of the discussions today to allow all of you to introduce yourself very briefly about your background and where you are today. So we can start with you, Samira.
Sure. Thank you, Ronja. And hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. As Ronja mentioned, I have, of course, as well been in this position before. So I'm really glad to be on the panel and hopefully share some useful tips and experiences. My name is Samira Osmanovic, and I'm working as urban recovery designer with the innovation team at the UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub. So the hub that is covering Europe and Central Asia. And I'm working mostly on an initiative that is working on local economic development in Moldova, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. And we are doing local economic development through urban approach makeover and through portfolios and systems thinking. So without going further into details, I'll stop there. But my background is in political science. I have a bachelor in political science and then a master's in Russian and Eurasian studies. So in the end, I think I managed to find my place here in the regional hub, which I aspire to through my studies. So thank you.
Thanks. Sonia, want to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm also very happy to be here. My name is Sonia Hammi, and I work as an EU grants manager at the Department of Global Public Health at Karolinska Institute. So I basically work as an EU advisor in the research projects that receives fund from the European Commission. I'm specialized in the EU regulation related to the Research and Innovation Framework Program. My daily work is quite mixed, but in short, I'm involved in the whole project lifecycle, consisting of 3 stages. So from helping the researchers with the application phase, the grant preparation phase, where we get the grant and negotiate the agreement between the Commission and the project partners, and also the project management when the project is up and running. My study background is a bachelor's degree in development studies and also a master's degree in global health. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon.
Yes, hello everyone. Also happy to be here. I work as a desk officer at the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs on a country desk. So my work is very much linked to following the countries which I'm responsible for, and it's a lot of internal and external communications with different departments at the ministry, with agencies, our embassies in the region, and also analysis of what happens. And I have a background in with a master's in European studies and a bachelor in Middle Eastern studies.
Thank you. Before we proceed, there was a small thing I forgot to mention. I said that we will have time for questions in the end, but I also have my colleague Alice here today to keep track on the chat. So if any questions that you have arise during the discussions that we have, just put them in the chat and we will have time for it later. Or you can just wait with it, and when we have time for questions, you can raise your hand, the digital hand, and unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, so coming to you, Sonia, you said you're working today as a EU grants manager. You have a background in global health. Looking at like where you are today, is that a vision that you had from the beginning when you started to study your master's degree?
I think it's a mix of strategies, vision, and chance. I know that when I started to study, I had an idea of doing a PhD, and I wanted to do it at KI, but not right after the studies. So I know that once I get a job there, it will be easier to get a position based on the contact. And wanting to work at KI was basically for 2 reasons. It's a big university with quite a lot of departments. So I felt like the opportunities there are endless. Even if you get bored of your current job, you could easily move to another department. And also because it's a medical university and I have a background in global health, so that would fit into my interests and also my profile. So when I applied for my current position, I was convinced that I wouldn't get it because one of the minimum requirements were a bachelor's degree in finance, which I did not have, and I was not very interested in that. but I took a chance because it sounded interesting still, apart from the finance part. And now I have been in this position for over 3 years.
I think you say something interesting there, because we all know reading these job ads, it can be very intimidating sometimes, and you just not apply because you feel like you don't qualify. But do you know, have you got like the feedback, I mean, from the recruitment process? Do you know maybe why they chose you? What was it that you had that still made them consider you as a candidate?
Yeah, what I can say is that the other requirements I kind of ticked all the boxes. And I know that one requirement were, for example, to work at a public authority, which I did from before because I worked at the county administrative board, I think it's called, of Östergötland. So that was a requirement. But I think also once I got to the interview, it all comes up to your personality, also my ability to cooperate with colleagues and other researchers and partners. So I think that was a factor as well.
Okay, thank you. And Samira, what about you? When it comes to your background and how what made you end up in your role, would you say?
Yeah, as I said before, like looking back at it now, I feel like I'm in the perfect position from where I was studying. But then the road hasn't been always that straight. And I think so I always had an aspiration to work in the development sector. And of course, UN has been something of a dream. But then during my studies, sometimes struggle even to get an internship to end up like to kind of advance and get some experience. But then in the end, I think what was really important to get me here was that I got an internship at Sida. And from there, then I was involved more into the development work, and also Sweden, maybe we will talk about this later with like presenting what opportunities there are, but Sweden is funding usually a lot of opportunities for young people to enter, for instance, the UN system.
Nej, det är inte så tyvärr.
Yeah. Sorry. So let me see where I was. So yeah, Sweden is usually funding some opportunities for young graduates to enter the UN system. And me being at Sida before, I got that experience and from the development sector. And then I also worked very closely with these programs, so I could see how the next steps could look like. So I applied for this job here, which was as a UN volunteer, it's called. For now, Sweden is not funding these, but there are other opportunities. And this is basically just a contract modality. So it's not like you are a volunteer, you're still getting paid, but then you're kind of entering in a very junior position. And when I applied for this job, it was also like I didn't have any background in urban recovery or like urban work. But this was mostly like a learning position. So I applied anyway. And looking back at maybe what landed me this position was not that I had the experience, but it was actually when I asked my supervisor, like, why did I get this? Because the interview, I didn't feel like it went great. It's the competency-based interview, and it's just very difficult, I found it. And she said, well, you seem like the most humble of all the ones we interviewed. And I think that was because I also said that I don't have the experience in this, but I would really like to learn and have this position. So yeah, that's a little bit on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, you want to share your path?
Yes, of course. I think like the others said, it's never a straight path from the start. I myself, I focused a lot on language studies in my bachelor's, and I also did language studies abroad, and I didn't have a clear vision of what I wanted to do exactly after my studies from the start. I was sure that I wanted to do something with languages, but then eventually I also got, because I've always been interested in the developments around the world, and so eventually I also got more interested into foreign policy and political science and so on, and managed to get into to my master's in European studies, which was a bit more in that direction. But I feel that many people have like in my field, a lot of people have studied political science or global studies or similar, and it's not always you can also come in other ways, and how I did end up in my role now. Well, I did an internship at the Swedish MFA during my master studies, and I think that was a big plus. I got to view how it worked a little bit from the inside, and that made me also more interested to maybe see if it was possible to work later, and also had the chance to do a traineeship in Brussels, which I think was a plus at within the EU institutions. I think for all of us in our field, it's always good to have experience from abroad, and I did my bachelor studies in Austria, in Vienna, and also, as I mentioned, language studies abroad, and then also this traineeship in Brussels. So I think all things added up somehow.
Thank you. Yeah, now you're already touching a bit on it, because I also wanted to ask you about, because I mean, you all have studied quite broad programs, and I guess many of you who are here listening today also studying maybe political science, global studies. Me, myself, I come from a peace and development background, and it's quite broad in the terms of like what you can do with it. But then maybe when it comes to starting applying for jobs, they are asking for more specific like skills that you don't really get maybe from the studies itself. Both you, Samira, and Simon, you touched on like languages, and Sonia, you have had experience from working with authority. Those type of experiences. Do you have anything else to add on that? That is like what is a good asset to have when it comes to like strengthening your profile when you come with a quite broad educational background? Samira.
Yeah, so you got me on this question because I myself struggled a lot that I was such a generalist, and especially because everyone seems to need to be to have a specialization, but then, and I struggled with this like for the whole first year. Even here, I'm now in my second year at UN, and I just realized that actually being a generalist is much better in the world we are facing, because the challenges are so interconnected and complex. So specialists will not if there is anyone that's specializing, like you will still be needed, but have a generalist perspective, and education is actually gonna benefit you probably more. And then also when you are this young, I know we are all probably very ambitious, and when it's a challenge being at a new job, being new in the role, and you want to deliver, you want to have that expertise, but just I was reminding myself, and I just want to put that out there, that we can't have that kind of expertise, even if you have been studying. When you enter a job, it's totally different. So just have this strength that you can have with you is that you go always with the learning mindset. And even if you're applying to a job that says this is requested, it doesn't need to be that that's actually what you will be doing at that job. So just be open-minded, and don't get scared by the descriptions of the job, or that you don't have the exact experience. And being a generalist is a strength in today's world. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon.
Yes, no, I agree. I think being a journalist is definitely a plus, and I will elaborate a bit more on what I said before. I mean, as you said, Ronnie, and you also came into Semira. I mean, if you've studied, many of us have studied, of course, political science or global studies or similar, and I think it's important to when you do start to apply for traineeships or work positions later, it's good to think about what is your edge, so to say, and I think when it comes to what I mentioned before, studying abroad or studying languages, it's for me it's not what I've seen, at least it's not only the question of, for example, knowing a specific language or having studied in a specific countries. It's also a way of showing that you're curious, that you take on new challenges for yourself to promote your CV or your career. And I think in an interview situation, it's something that you can use. And for example, if you want to work on developments in China, then it's still a big plus if you have studied, for example, in France, because they will see, okay, this person, he or her, he or she, they're the person is not afraid, so to say, to take on new challenges. So I think that's something to mention, and especially so also with languages. It's not necessarily that you need to know a specific language for a context, but it shows that you have the capacity to learn new things, and that you're interested in other languages and cultures, which is often a big plus in our sector of work.
Very important point. I think you can talk about it as like what we call transferable skills, that maybe you feel that you don't have so much relevant experience, but think about the experience that you have and try to transfer it. Even if it's you working at a supermarket, maybe there you had some responsibilities, and also to work in a team, or maybe you have been a leader at a summer camp for children, there you maybe got some leadership skills. So it's always about also trying to find those, as you say, like to show more how you got those skills, and that it might be applicable in different ways. And as you say, to show the maybe ambition, or to show that you have an engagement, that you are active in for an organization or similar. So transferable skills, bring that with you. So if you come to more, maybe looking to the application processes, and we talked a bit before we had, before we met before today, and you were telling me about how many jobs you have applied to and the endless hours that you spend on writing different applications. Do you have anything that you want to say to that when it comes to writing an application? What is important, do you think, from your experiences to portray? Because we know today that as a recruiter, you're ending up in a pile of applications. So how would you structure maybe your CV or personal letter or application document to stand out? Simon?
Well, there are plenty of things to think about, of course, but I mentioned a few of things I've been trying to think about, and it's to work on your uniqueness, and that can be, well, in my case, that I've loved to study languages and studied abroad, for example, but it can also be, for me, in my case, I found that I've worked a couple of years in a warehouse, also as team leader for a year or two when I was younger, and I realized that was a big plus when I did my first traineeship, for example, and also during the interview later on. So I think it's important to think about these skills that you can have and that you can put in your personal letter, for example, that you have this experience, and also think about things that make you unique in terms of your personal life as well. It can be maybe not always perfect for a CV or a personal letter. But if you've been, I don't know, wandering in Himalaya, or if you play a certain instrument, it can be something that you can use in an interview to make yourself stick out. And if you can connect these experiences or these interests of yours with the work position that you're applying for, or the traineeship, or whatever it can be, I think that can be a big plus when you're in the, as you said, Ronja, in the mass of hundreds of applicants sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first you have to put everything down on paper. You have to really make it to that interview. Then I guess it's more what you said, Samira, that they found you the most humble candidate, and I think they might not have seen that on the paper, but then you have to actually also enter to the interview room for them to see you as a person. So yeah, Sonja.
Yeah, just a short comment, but my top tip would be to also do your research about the organization and the position well, to understand its priorities and requirements, and from there just be clear about the skills you have to offer and where these might fit, and also highlight and focus on them in your CV and cover letter. As for in my case, even if I did not have what they looked for, I focused on the other skills that might be valuable.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, to read a general application maybe doesn't take you that far. So really to have those questions with you, like why you and why me, like why, that you also to show them why you are choosing them as your employee, sorry. Samira.
Yeah, just to second Sonja as well, like don't underestimate the importance of the buzzwords, because if you see what's in the job description, like include this in your application, because once you're going through the applications, we all know like there's maybe, I don't even know, 30 seconds you're looking at one application, you're just looking for these words really. So that, and also just apply for everything that you think can be relevant or interesting for you. And because I also have friends that sometimes are like, oh, I didn't get this any job or internship for the next term or so on, and then it could be maybe they applied for 5 internships or 5 jobs, and really like unless you have applied for 100, don't say I didn't get anything. So that would be also one of the tips, like just don't stop applying. And buzzwords.
I could also just add one thing to what Samira said. I know that many of us start using AI now to write personal letters and so on. And I mean, it's of course a plus if it can help on the way. But I would be careful not to let AI do the whole job, because you sometimes read letters and you can feel that it's not that it's sometimes too complicated or too professional if you've not worked in the field before. So I think that's important to think about. If you use these sort of tools, it's good to double check and put your own touch on it, and so you really understand what you're sending in.
Good point. You all have done internships before. You mentioned that, and I think that is it's a tricky thing that you can also get stuck in. We see that especially in this sector, that it's a merit, or it's something that's usually the natural way from the studies to have a work. But I also talk to a lot of people who tend to get stuck in that. You're not just doing one internship, but 2 or 3, and can't stay in unpaid positions forever. But can you pick out something from the internship experiences that you've had, and how maybe it can connect to where you are today? Sonja or Samira.
Okay, so I just wanted to add actually one point before I take this new question, because also the importance of social media and your presence there, especially LinkedIn. Like update whatever you are doing and maybe you think, this is not so important to update on your LinkedIn, but just do that, because it's not like you're going to be headhunted, but once you apply for something, your recruiter will look at your LinkedIn, and that is so important. Like, just highlight everything, and even if it's something minor, it can be rewritten. And I think Ronja, you maybe touched on this before, so that was just one point there. But yeah, what was as I said before, with the internship at Sida, I think what was important for me is that I got exposed to the network I did. And Sida is, of course, working with a lot of development partners. So it's both civil society organizations, but then also, of course, UN agencies. And it was very helpful to just make those connections and understand more about the development work and have partners or these agencies think, so that you can kind of align your applications or just see where you could be a good fit. Yeah, I had another point, but I lost it. So maybe over to Simon.
Yes, Simon.
Yes. Well, I would say that once you have your internship or your traineeship, it's of course important to do to take the most out of it that you can, and be engaged and really show that I want to learn more. I want to have as many tasks as possible, and also make it's also a possibility to make a network and to have connections for later for applying for temporary positions or whatever. So I think that's important to think about. I mean, it can feel as something you take for granted, but I think it's very important that, and it's something that is seen when you're at a traineeship. The chances of getting like a summer temporary job or whatever afterwards, it grows quite a lot if you tell them that I'm interested to stay here and work later. Some people, if you don't say that during the traineeship or wait until the last day, it can be a lost opportunity. So that's good to think about.
Yes. Mira, again.
So the second point I was about to make. So I'm afraid sometimes my tips will come up as fluffy, but something that my supervisor here is really focusing on is saying, like, just be useful. So once you have the opportunity to have an internship or maybe a temporary role, just make yourself useful for the team. So you don't need to have the experience or expertise, but just always be like, I can help on this, I can help on that. Of course, don't overstretch yourself, but by taking all those opportunities that are there, and you get exposed to more, you get more useful for the team, you'll entangle yourself also within the team and the working structure. So once maybe there's some turnovers in the team or so on, then you will be one of the persons that actually knows the work and can take it forward. And then also, don't be afraid to ask if you have the internship, it's coming to an end, but also like flag it very early on that, hey, I can be here for the summer if that would be useful for you to have a summer, to have me over the summer. And I know, like, I fought so much for my position at Sida, and there's always like this budget constraints and so on. But just try to make yourself useful and to find where you can fit in and how you can kind of get a new position or temporary job for summer.
Thank you. Sonja?
I think Simon and Samira already mentioned this, but I think internships are a great opportunity because it can open a door either at that organization or another organization. I did my internship through EM Swedish in Zambia. And I think that was a great opportunity for me because in my current position, I am working closely with partners from sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm not saying that Zambia is representing the whole sub-Saharan Africa, but that gave me a basic understanding of the different cultural differences and the cultural context as well. So that has been a great asset for me.
Thank you. Simon?
Yes, maybe just to add one last thing and a bit of a personal experience. In Sweden, you usually have to do your traineeship or internship during your studies, which can be a great plus because you can do it as part. And I would say if you don't get your preferred traineeship or internship during your bachelor, for example, let's say at the government offices or at Sida or FBA or whatever, I would say that you're likely to get it during your masters, because since they take in both master students and bachelor students, usually you have a big plus if you're doing your masters. And also important to think about. I would like to say something about the doing traineeships in the EU. I mean, they have plenty of positions and take in a lot of trainees every year in the Commission and the Parliament and so on in Brussels, and they are usually traineeships that you do after you're done with your studies. So that can be a tip as well. If you're done with your studies and you don't find the perfect job that you want to do, maybe if you've done a traineeship then already somewhere in Sweden, for example, then your chances of getting a traineeship in the EU are larger if you have that experience already and that you're done with your studies. So that can be a backup. And I think it's also a very important experience or valued experience when you come back to Sweden or wherever you want to go, if you have this EU experience as well, because it gives you a wider portfolio, so to say.
Good tip. And I think, yeah, if you stay around now for the second half, you will also get to hear more about these maybe junior opportunities that still requires that you have graduated. So it's also a middle step maybe between doing something through the school and
snacka på engelska hela tiden och nu ska
and time is flying, so I wanted to maybe open up the floor for some questions before we wrap up. If you want to speak, you can just raise the digital hand and unmute yourself or use the chat. I can see that we have got some questions. Has any one of you experienced group interviews for a job? Do they differ a lot from individual interviews? Is one question.
I haven't experienced that. And also I think that in this kind of jobs like internship recruitments, usually there are maybe not like what's called group interviews are not so common. But also I don't know, maybe Ronja, you have experience because also you're recruiting sometimes.
We haven't used that for the internship positions as such, or I haven't also been in one myself, I think. Have any one of you experienced it?
Sorry, Simon, if I can just add actually on this, because sorry to interrupt you, because I just remember that I haven't experienced this, but I've heard here that they did actually this kind of interview for some other position, and sometimes you would think, of course, they differ a lot from the individual interviews because you will be in a group with people. There's different dynamics, and maybe even if you sometimes think of yourself as a someone who speaks up, is a leadership person or something, sometimes maybe in that room you won't be like that. But then I think what people maybe do wrong in this kind of group interviews are that they try to be like this leadership person or like speak up much and so on. And sometimes recruiters are not looking for that. They're looking maybe for someone who's more like allowing the group to speak and so on. So this is just something that I remember now, and maybe thought it could be useful.
Yeah, as you say, I think it depends on what they want to achieve with that form. This more to see you, maybe if you're going to work maybe in a close team, that method can be a good one to test that. And another question: how important is a master's degree? You all have one, so
I can say, I mean, I work in the academia, so it's quite important if you want to work at KI. But also, I think it comes up to your interests as well. I don't think you should study languages or courses if you're not interested in that. So I think that's the most important thing. I studied the master because I studied global development studies, and that's quite broad. And I knew that I was interested in global health, so that was quite natural for me. But I don't think you should study anything just for the sake of it. If you're interested in a master, go for it.
Well put. Did any one of you do a MFS, the opportunity that they have removed now, but have you done it? And do you know how it's generally viewed in the sector?
I didn't do one, but I was granted MFS stipend, but then of course COVID. And but I still included this on my LinkedIn that I was awarded a stipend, but then I couldn't make it. You know, it shows at least that you had the ambition to do so. And then of course that it's always, I think, the experience from abroad is always valued. And then also it shows the MFS also shows your specific interest in what you want to research and write about. So, yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, now since they have removed that opportunity, it's and I think workplaces are still maybe using it, putting it there as a merit. So of course it's difficult to obtain that. So as you
we're reading in the chat actually that MFS is back. MSF is back.
Really?
And Nicole was nodding her head, so maybe it could be.
Awesome. Thank you for contributing. I didn't know that actually. Simon. Now we are muted.
Sorry. Yes. No, I just wanted to comment on the need of a master's degree. I don't think it's not compulsory, but I'm feeling that it's more and more asked for in many situations, and for example, for the EU institutions, a lot of people have a master or are doing their masters, and so I think it's worth to think about. Then you can, of course, do in Sweden. It's not impossible to get you can get a traineeship during your bachelor, so then you can maybe make it without a master's. But I will say it's definitely a plus. And then I just wanted to also regarding EU. Traineeships in the EU, there is a very good newsletter that Universitets- and Högskolerådet are doing once a month. I thought I also put the link for this letter in the chat, which can be recommended to follow.
Perfect. Yeah, our time is actually up. I see that there are still more questions, but I was thinking also that I will put together an email to all of you that signed up for today's seminar, and I will talk to the panelists, and maybe they can also answer the questions in a written form so that I can compile everything together with necessary or useful links or tips forward. So I will share everything afterwards as well, in case you missed to catch everything from the chat. Just final sentence from each one of you, if you want to share what would be your best career tip that the participants here can do maybe today, or you have said so many ones. I'm just, if you have any final.
Yeah, I have two things. The first one is be flexible, because sometimes this may mean taking a role abroad or in a smaller organization, which is not your dream job, but it can open a door to your dream job. And also, do not give up. I applied for I don't know how many positions where I believe I fulfilled all the criterias, but we're not even called for an interview, and that can really affect your self-esteem. But that little door will open for you, even if you might not understand that yet. So don't give up. Thank you.
Good one.
My last tip would be again to go for languages. I mean, if you're interested in it, and the tip would be to not start too late, because often if you do your bachelor's, you do your master's, and then you realize, oh, it would have been nice to have studied French or whatever. So I would recommend to start early and do it during your studies, because then when you're done with your studies and you apply for positions, you realize that, oh, it's nice to have this extra edge, so to say. So that would be my last tip.
Thank you.
I also share so much and then I forget what I'm about to say, but I just saw that also I'm trying to answer a question here in the chat about I right now work in the retail, and I also did that for a very long time until like end of my master's, and was like, when am I going to get a relevant experience so I can proceed? So, but even then, like, just keep applying for everything that you see is relevant. There are plenty of online volunteering experiences that you can acquire. Go to seminars that interest you, and then share that on LinkedIn, as I said before. Then you see what your recruiters can see what you're interested in. And I will also share a link, but there is something called online volunteering, UNV, United Nations Volunteer, and these positions are unpaid, and there's plenty of them that are recruiting for like some short term assignments. And this is a great way to get experience. Also, competition is quite high, but I would recommend that. So, thank you. It was great to be part of this.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And as I said, like, I will compile everything that we have said today and for the remaining questions. And now Alice shared the contact details for all of you in case anyone wants to get in touch on a more personal level. Thank you so much, and feel free to stick around for the second part. If not, I will talk to you later. And from now on, we will switch on to Swedish. Så, då ska jag ta bort de här. Så. Eller gör vi? Jag lyckas inte ta bort själva. Så. Då ska vi gå vidare in till nästa del utav dagens session. Och då har vi med oss Malin, Sofia och Nicole från Sida. Som ska få börja inleda här med vad ni har för öppningar, möjligheter på gång. Så jag lämnar över till er.
Tack. Då börjar jag med att dela skärm här. Så vi bestämde att vi skulle vara först, eller hur, Sofia?
Ja, ser alla det som delas?
Nej,
jag tror inte att den är.
Ledsen för det. Så, nu ska vi se om... Jag försökte börja dela här, men låt mig se. Så, ska vi se. Visas det nu?
Ja, nu är det bra.
Ja, då ska vi se. Tack för tålamod. Ja, kan ni se första sidan där?
Vi ser inte den, vi ser det andra.
Okej. Förlåt. Ja, okej. Ja, hej allihopa. Mitt namn är Nicole Moranti och jag kommer från Sida. Jag är handläggare för de så kallade JPO, SARK och SDP-programmen som är en del av de juniora resursbasprogrammen. Och med mig har jag min kollega Sofia här.
Ja, och jag heter Sofia Myrholm-Klallen. Jag är programansvarig för JPD, UMV och UMIV-program.
Ja. Och Sofia?
Ja, förlåt, jag ska bara säga, för visst ser ni också det som en alltihopa. Ni ser inte bara själva presentationen, utan ni ser våra anteckningar och så också.
Är det så?
Ja.
Ja, förlåt.
Okej, vi ser på ändå. Är du i början av din karriär och vill börja arbeta direkt inom FN, EU eller FN, ja, då kommer det som vi pratar om nu vara kanske lite intressant för dig. Genom våra juniora resursbasprogram så finansierar vi tjänster direkt i fält på regionkontor eller högkvarter hos FN eller EU. Och för att hitta våra tjänster så kan du gå in på www.sida.se och söka under de internationella tjänsterna, så kommer de där.
Ja,
och sen tänkte vi gå vidare lite och bara kort berätta om det vi kommer att prata om idag. Och det är bland annat introduktion till begreppet sekundering och de strategimål som vi arbetar med. Det är lite information om våra aktuella program, kommande utlysningar och vart du kan gå för att få mer information.
Ja, och sekundering, vad menar vi med det? Jo, enligt Svenska Akademins ordlista så handlar det om att hjälpa, bistå och understödja. Det handlar också om en tidsbegränsad tjänstgöring utomlands i en internationell organisation. Och det kan finnas lite olika upplägg kring sekunderingar gällande ansvarsfördelning, lön, förmåner, villkor och så vidare. Och det är ju lite beroende på vilket till exempel resursbasprogram som man deltar i eller någon annan form av program, sekunderingsprogram. Och målen med de juniora resursbasprogrammen enligt tidigare strategi ska jag säga, för vi väntar just nu på en ny strategi som ska vägleda oss framåt. Men hittills har det ett av målen varit stärkt kapacitet och lärande inom svensk resursbas för internationellt genomförande av Agenda 2030. Vidare är det ökad svensk representation på strategiska tjänster i internationellt utvecklingssamarbete och till sist också ökad användning och återförande av svensk kompetens och erfarenheter inom internationellt utvecklingssamarbete. Här på, ni ser en översiktsbild nu, den är väldigt liten tror jag, och speciellt eftersom vi inte har lyckats dela det här på riktigt rätt sätt. Men här ser ni i alla fall de juniora resursbasprogram som vi har igång just nu. Och överser ni det mest seniora kan man säga, eller de två mest seniora utav de här juniora. Och det är det så kallade SARC-programmet som står för Special Assistant to the Resident Coordinator. Och så har vi också SDP-programmet där, Specialist for the Development Program. Vi kommer inte nyrekrytera inom ramen för de här i år. Men bara i korthet vill jag nämna att de programmen är på upp till 3 år i taget. Alltså man kan delta upp till 3 år och det krävs en master och minst 5 års relevant arbetslivserfarenhet för att komma i fråga för de här programmen. Så där finns det också en åldersgräns som FN själva har beslutat om och det har varit på max 39 år. Vi har 2+3 stycken sekunderade inom ramen för de här programmen just nu. Men de kommer att avsluta ganska snart, i alla fall ett par av dem. Sen har vi då JPO-programmet som är kanske det äldsta av de här programmen skulle jag tro. Sverige gick med någon gång på 60-talet faktiskt och det på motsvarar P2-nivå inom FN-systemet. För längden på programmet är upp till 3 år. Kontrakten är då på 1 år i taget. Och för att bli aktuell för JPO-programmet behöver bland annat ha en masterexamen inom ett för tjänsten relevant område. Och det krävs minst 2 års och max 4 års relevant arbetslivserfarenhet. Och relevant då är det för den JPO-tjänst man söker. Vi har 42 stycken sekunderade inom ramen för det här programmet just nu. Vi har tidigare haft lite fler men har inte haft möjlighet att nyrekrytera på ett tag. Vi hade 11 tjänster ute på hemsidan tidigare i februari, mars, och rekryteringar pågår fortfarande i slutskedet där, eller vid FN ska jag säga, för det är de som ansvarar för rekryteringarna. Och vi kommer gå ut med nya tjänster i juni, tanken. Jag lämnar över till dig, Sofia.
Och då ska jag berätta lite om JPD-programmet och UNIV-programmen. Och JPD-programmet är Junior Professional in Delegation. Som JPD så har man en roll inom EU och man kan söka placering antingen hos EEAS, alltså EUs utrikestjänst, som hanterar bland annat politik, press och information, eller hos KOM som är EU-delegationen där man arbetar mer med handläggning och utvecklingsfrågor. Programmet är på 2 år. Det krävs att man har en uttagen master och att man har max 4 års arbetslivserfarenhet. Just nu har vi 2 personer ute och de är enbart finansierade av EU. Och nästa omgång av rekrytering är 2025. Och då tidigare år så har vi också gått in och finansierat flera tjänster inom det programmet. Så då har vi haft kanske 15 utsända. Ja, och sen har vi UNIV och det är United Nations Volunteer och Youth Volunteer. Och det var det som Sida pratade lite om och rekommenderade er att söka. Och där har också Sida ett samarbete med UNV för just UNIV. Och det är vårt nyaste program och det började 2017. Och målet då bland annat var att bredda kandidatpoolen till JPO-programmet som ju kräver 2 års arbetslivserfarenhet. För att bli UNIV krävs en uttagen kandidatexamen, att man är max 29 år, har svenskt medborgarskap samt 0 till 2 års erfarenhet. Praktik räknas in i den. Och i år kommer vi att rekrytera cirka 15 volontärer och vi har just nu 25 stycken ute i fält. Målet med våra UNIVs är att de ska ut till fältkontor och rekryteringen sköts av UNV som är liksom en kanal för flertalet FN-organisationer med allt från UN Women, UNICEF, WHO, UNHCR. Ja. Det var lite kort om det.
En fråga bara som var relaterat till det. Det är en fråga här när det står master. Hur ser ni på en magisterexamen där?
Ja, det kan vara lite olika skulle jag säga. Så att det går inte att säga något generellt. Men en 2-årig master är det som brukar gälla. Ja, så i så fall. Om det stod master för just JPO-programmet till exempel och SARK och så vidare.
Jag ser att det kommer upp en fråga om är UNV och UNIV obetalda. Och de är alltså det är en volontärtjänst, man räknas inte som FN-staff utan man går som personell. Men man får ersättning för resor, försäkring, living allowance och så vidare. Som täcker ens liksom levnadskostnader kan man väl säga. Men det är ingen lön så.
Vi har ju lite begränsat med tid till vårt förfogande idag. Men vi vill kort bara nämna att vi kommer gå ut med eller planerar att gå ut med ett antal JPO-tjänster nu i juni. Så håll utkik på vår hemsida. Och mot mitten av juni planerar vi också gå ut med ett antal UN Youth Volunteer-tjänster. Så det är det ni ser på skärmen nu. Och Sofia, du nämnde det här med JPD-tjänster också i början på nästa år. Vi planerar att ha ett webbinarium med lite mer fokus då på JPO-tjänsterna. Så gå in på Sidas hemsida under Development Talks och seminarier så kommer ni hitta mer information om hur ni anmäler er och så.
Ja, men det kan vi säga också att den 13 juni är det för JPO och sen kommer vi ha en för UNV-tjänsten.
Ja,
så det är
precis.
För båda, men en varsin.
Jättebra Sofia att du flikar in med det. Jag är rädd för att det kanske vår tid börjar ta slut här. Men har ni frågor som inte besvaras här eller om ni inte kommer kunna vara med på de här webbinarierna gå gärna in på vår hemsida också, internationella tjänster, för där står det väldigt mycket information om de här programmen. Och hittar ni inte svar där så kan ni förstås mejla oss på den här mejladressen som ni ser på skärmen nu. det vill säga resursbasprogram@sida.se. Just nu är det lite högt tryck, arbetstryck, men vi försöker besvara era frågor så snart som vi kan.
Ja.
Mm.
Kommer ni dröja kvar här till frågestunden också?
Ja.
Jag tänker sen...
Vi försöker, ja.
Vi ska släppa in Malin här först och sen när vi lämnar över till UD då tänker jag att då skulle ni också kunna ha koll i chatten och svara direkt där om ni vill. Till de som har specifika frågor.
Tack så mycket.
Tack så jättemycket. Malin, lite om trainee-programmet.
Ja, men precis. Hör ni mig bra?
Ja.
Bra, då ska jag se om jag kan få till det här med att dela skärm. Nu ska vi se. Nu ska vi se. Ser ni nu?
Ja.
Är det tillräckligt stort?
Ja, lite funkar. Det
funkar? Mm. Bra. Men hej hörni, alltså stort tack för inbjudan. Jag heter då Malin Myrhage och jag är projektledare för Sidas trainee-program. Och vi har ju då haft traineeprogram på Sida. Senaste var i nutid var faktiskt 2020. Så det var första gången på ganska länge vi har haft traineeprogram. Innan var det senast på 90-talet. Så att nu är vi igång med ett nytt program då som börjar nu till hösten. Och jag är inne i en väldigt intensiv rekryteringsskede där nu då. Men jag tänkte berätta lite kort om det programmet. Nu ska vi se. Så där. Nuvarande traineeprogram då kommer börja till hösten och det kommer pågå under 1 år. Och för i år så kommer vi anställa 10-15 traineer. Det har varit en väldigt intensiv rekryteringsprocess med över 1500 sökanden och många olika moment som man går igenom. Men det här är ju verkligen en jätteviktig och strategisk rekrytering för oss. Där vi tänker långsiktigt på de här traineerna. Och vi vet i dagsläget inte om vi kommer ha traineeprogram igen och när, men det är ju vår förhoppning att vi kan rekrytera på det här sättet som är väldigt strategiskt och långsiktigt. Så det ska jag börja med att säga att det är vår förhoppning även om inget är bestämt. Och när man blir anställd som trainee på Sida så är det en tillsvidare tjänst med 6 månaders provanställning. Och det ingår också utlandstjänstgöring i 3 månader. Och efter det här traineeprogrammet, efter det här året är ju då kommer man jobba som handläggare på Sida med biståndshandläggning och efter det här året då så får man söka sig vidare, visa intresse för lediga tjänster antingen på Sida i Sverige eller utomlands på någon ambassad. Och bara jättekort för att bara visa så att ni blir sugna på det här programmet så ska jag bara visa lite vad det handlar om i praktiken. Och det kan ju såklart skilja sig från år till år. Det här är ett preliminärt programupplägg för hur programmet kommer se ut nu i år då så att vissa justeringar kan ske. Men generellt så handlar det om att det finns ett gemensamt lärande där man håller ihop den här trainee-gruppen med 2 jättespännande introduktionsveckor där man får lära sig allt möjligt och lära känna organisationen och trainee-kollegorna så att säga. Och sen efter det så kommer man då komma ut på en enhet på Sida och ganska snabbt få prova på det här operativa jobbet, handläggning av biståndsinsatser med stöd av en handledare då. Så det kommer finnas sammanhållet en dag i veckan, vi kallar det för fredagslärande. Då träffas man i traineegruppen och det kan vara olika seminarier i alla möjliga typer av ämnen, fördjupningar, studiebesök till samarbetspartners eller andra myndigheter, olika uppdrag och så vidare. Så det kommer vara dels då en gemensam del som ni ser på den här bilden, den här gula delen som är för hela gruppen. Och sen, men mycket av jobbet är också att man ska lära sig när man jobbar då med stöd av handledare och ha en egen utvecklingsplan. Och sen så kommer de här traineerna i år då, kommer då mot slutet av traineeåret det är då man kommer ut på en ambassad och verkligen får pröva det här viktiga arbetet som görs i fält ute på våra ambassader. Att få lite smak för det. För ett av våra liksom huvudsyften med det här traineeprogrammet är att rekrytera in personer som verkligen, dels verkligen vill jobba som handläggare på Sida, men framförallt också har siktet utsatt på att man vill jobba på ambassad och i liksom, postkonfliktmiljöer där man kan göra som störst skillnad. Och då får man liksom pröva på det under det här traineeåret. Så det var lite kort om upplägget för programmet. Och jag kan säga då av våra traineer då för 2020 så är då, här ser ni en liten bild över vart i världen de befinner sig. Ungefär hälften av de 19 vi tog in förra gången 2020, över hälften har kommit ut och jobbar på ambassad. Och vissa är liksom på väg hem tillbaks till Sverige för att de har varit ute i flera år nu. Och när man är utsänd på Sida så är det vanligast att man är utsänd 3 år med möjlighet till förlängning. Så att över hälften har kommit ut på ambassad och hälften sitter här i Stockholm och gör ett fantastiskt jobb. Så att det här är ett jätteviktigt program för oss helt enkelt. Jättekort om kvalifikationer. Det här kan ju skiljas. Nu är det ganska så här plottrig text här. Och jag kommer inte rada upp alla de här delarna. Men det här kan ju skilja sig från år till år såklart. Men så här såg annonsen ut i år. Och det jag kan säga är väl att så här, apropå det här med utbildningsnivå. Man behöver ha en akademisk examen som är liksom klar och genomförd. Man har tagit ut sin examen och då ska det vara minst kandidatnivå. Många sökande har master, absolut, och det är positivt, men vi är lika intresserade av personer som har kandidatnivå och i kombination med det har gjort spännande saker och så vidare. Så att minst kandidatnivå och goda kunskaper i svenska och engelska, att man ska ha minst 1 års relevant arbetslivserfarenhet och sen är det bland det viktigaste att man verkligen vill och är beredd att efter programmet då jobba på ambassad och även i postkonfliktmiljö är liksom ett grundkrav. Och sen får man max ha 3 års arbetslivserfarenhet inom liksom internationellt utvecklingssamarbete. För vi ser att har du mer än 3 år och du har jobbat med exakt våra frågor, men då har man inte lika stor liksom, nytta av det här traineeprogrammet. Då är det snarare kanske ordinarie tjänster som man kan söka sig till och andra typer av tjänster. Och sen behöver man vara svensk medborgare för att det behövs. Det är ett krav när man ska jobba på ambassader. Och det har varit många olika saker som har varit meriterande. Om jag ska lyfta några så är det ju självklart väldigt meriterande om man har ett extra 3:e språk med goda kunskaper i det. Mycket meriterande om du har erfarenhet av att liksom bott, verkat i utomlands och länder i utvecklingskontext. Men så finns det, som ni kanske ser på sliden här, en rad olika tematiker. Vi har ju ett väldigt brett uppdrag, jobbar inom många olika typer av tematiker. Så att där kan man liksom ha meriterande delar som man uppfyller. Självklart har man liksom stark inom digitalisering på olika sätt. Det är ju det också intressant. Men också skulle jag säga att vi vill ju få in personer med många olika typer av erfarenheter. Så att om du har jobbat med till exempel hållbar utveckling, men inom olika, det kan vara FN-systemet, men också inom det privata, kommunal, ideellt, alltså just få mixen av personer som kommer in med olika perspektiv är viktigt för oss i det här traineeprogrammet då. Och det jag ska säga är att för er som är nyfikna mer, så om ni går in på sida.se så har vi ganska mycket information där under jobba med bistånd och framförallt traineeprogrammet. Och där kan man också följa lite intervjuer som har gjorts med tidigare traineer där man får läsa om vad de har gjort sedan tidigare och hur deras jobb ser ut idag efter traineeprogrammet. Man kommer också se ett axplock av vår kravprofil om man vill liksom kika lite närmare på de delarna. Och har man frågor som inte besvaras idag så får ni jättegärna mejla mig och då ser ni min mejladress där på skärmen, hoppas jag, malin.myrhage@sida.se. Så det var min så här lite snabb presentation om traineeprogrammet. Så kom gärna med mer frågor nu på sista passet om det finns sådana.
Tack. Ja, jag kan bara ta en kort fråga som var relaterad till det du pratar om nu. Det står ju, nu skriver jag om det här med liksom relevant arbetslivserfarenhet. Räknas praktik, volontärarbete, räknas det in i det?
Jag skulle säga så här att man behöver ha minst 1 års betald arbetslivserfarenhet, alltså en betald anställning. Det måste man ha med sig i botten så att säga. Och sen kan jag väl säga att det är väldigt brett vad vi anser är relevant arbetslivserfarenhet. Och så att det behöver absolut inte vara att du ska jobba 1 år inom liksom med biståndsfrågor. Men vi måste se att det här är 1 års relevant erfarenhet som är betald anställning. Men utöver det så är det ju såklart jättemeriterande med alla möjliga praktikplatser, volontärarbete som man då såklart kan uppfylla flera delar i det meriterande. Men ett grundkrav är minst 1 års liksom relevant betald arbetslivserfarenhet, en betald anställning. Ja.
Tack så mycket. Och det kommer säkert trilla in fler frågor som vi kan spara här till slutet när vi wrappar ihop det.
Ja.
Kommer jag stänga av inspelningen här.